Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to TryThisAt.Work. My name is Kelly Cleland. I am a Customer Success Manager with Microsoft and a TryThisAt.Work leader. I am joined today by Scott Rendell, who is a Cloud Solution Architect here at Microsoft, and he is also, as you all know, another one of our fabulous TryThisAt.Work leaders, and he's also going to be presenting today. We are talking all things team calling options. This is part 2 of our hybrid work series. Continuing on from last week, if you missed last week's session, it is up and on demand. So please feel free to visit TryThisAt.Work and you'll find the on-demand YouTube video linked there. To go ahead and get us started, just some quick housekeeping items. As always, these are public-facing live events, so we don't capture any information about you or use that in any way, shape, or form. So just know that even if we were to have any piece of data on you, we would never leverage that in any way. In addition to that, speaking of data, we are doing a new process. There was some feedback just in the past about, wanting to be able to, unfortunately, on the TryThisAt.Work site, we can't link the iCals there. And there were some requests for individuals to be added to the email distribution list to receive those invites. So we do have a survey that I have posted into the chat where you can opt in to receive all communications directly from Microsoft, have somebody from Microsoft reach out to you, be informed about not only the TryThisAt.Work events with those meeting invites, but also some other fabulous events that we have going on, again, tailored to all audiences, business and IT alike. And then, of course, in that form itself is also a way for you to provide feedback on today's session or give feedback in terms of topics that you would like to hear on upcoming events. With that, without further ado, because I don't want to dig into his time with all the great content he's going to cover, but again, please feel free to submit your questions throughout the event, and I'm happy to interject. And with that, Scott, take it away.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks a lot. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another session. Thank you for joining us today. Today, we're going to be talking about Teams calling options. So many of you have heard that there's some new things out there, and we're going to talk about them today and kind of demystify all that. From an agenda standpoint, I'm going to start off with just some common questions that I get, and then we're going to jump into those options: calling plans and countries, direct routing, operator connect, and how you can leverage all 3 of them in your tenant to give your users the best possible experience. And then, of course, we do have the Q&A part. Kelly is kindly moderating the chat, the Q&A, so you can use that to ask your questions, and she will forward those on to me. So, some common questions about Teams calling options. What are my options? Well, when it comes to Teams calling, when Microsoft first rolled this out, it was just calling plans, and even then, it was, I think we started with 6 countries. So it was pretty small. We had the phone system and we had a full set of features, but we just didn't have a lot of places where you could get telephony from Microsoft. So then we came out with this thing called direct routing. And I did a whole series on direct routing and what your direct routing options are. But excuse me, in a nutshell, direct routing is an SBC, a small session border controller. Almost forgot what my own acronyms were. A session border controller. So you can keep your existing carrier, your existing phone company, and get those calls in and out of Microsoft Teams. And that opened up the world to people and phone system, and we saw a humongous jump in phone usage after that. And now we have this thing called Operator Connect. And without giving it away until we get to that slide, it basically is direct routing on steroids. And I'll explain what that means a little bit later. We're going to talk about, people want to know, why would I choose one or the other? We will go over that when we talk about the mixing and matching of them, which you can do. And yes, you can still use your Teams devices. And no, it's not all that difficult to manage. Again, I'll break all these out, but these are the kinds of questions we're going to answer today in our session. So again, direct routing. Let's fire up a laser pointer here. So I don't know why they put calling plans on the right. This is what came first. So we have calling plans. Then came direct routing, and this is Operator Connect. And I'm just going to sit on this slide because if you're watching this on demand, you may want to just look at the reasons that we've stated why you would want to use one over the other. Again, it's really up to you. Some of the common reasons to use one over the other is cost. Let's be honest, it comes down to cost sometimes. Ease of use could be another. You've got a very complex dial plan or very complex billing schema set up with your existing carrier, so you may choose direct routing instead of using calling plans, or we may not offer calling plans in that country. Are some of the reasons you might pick one over the other. One of the biggest complaints that we've heard from people about our calling plans is the way we bill. So in previous sessions, you've heard me talk about our licensing and how we have calling plans that pool by region and by tenant and by license type. I'm not going to get into that today, but so a lot of people found that more complex than it needed to be and didn't necessarily fit the bill because they're fixed number of minutes per month. What happens if you go over? What happens if everybody goes over? What about international calling? Things like that. So there was a fair amount of feedback that we got behind the calling plans, and as well as the fact that we didn't cover that many countries, but we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a bit. So if you're watching the video, probably been able to read through all this by now while listening to me yammer on. So let's go down and head on over to the next slide. Okay, so calling plans. As you can see, we've expanded, and that's, I think, great. You can see now we're in 28 markets. You heard me say we started off with 6. We're now in 28. That's a list of the 28 different markets. A couple of those markets, one being Australia, the other being Japan, have third-party companies that are administering the phone numbers for us. It's still done in Teams. It's all taken care of in Teams, but the underlying carrier in that case is a third party. And it's Telstra and in Australia, and I can't remember who the other one is for Japan. It's not all that important for the context of this call, but just understand there are a couple of markets where we did end up using a third party. And then, of course, we see that we've got the highlighted new areas here and really spreading out into Eastern Europe. And that's great for our folks over in the UK. And of course, we've always covered the US, Canada, and Puerto Rico. Again, why calling plans? Because they're easy to set up. It's easy billing. It's easy to manage. It's all done in the Teams admin portal. You can do this self-service. So for SMB customers that want to do this and get rid of the hardware and just can go completely soft client or completely cloud-based. All of this can be done right online. And I guess the last thing I'd want to tell you about is the fact that we do have both domestic and domestic plus international plans. We talked in previous times about the fact that you could set up communication credits to handle international charges if you only wanted to purchase a domestic plan. So you have that. So domestic, international, or domestic plus communication credits will get you your outbound and inbound calling in these countries. Moving along, direct routing. Now, direct routing really opened up the world for Microsoft Teams. It allows any carrier or even SIP trunking provider the ability to spin up an SBC, a session border controller, whether it be a hardened device in a data center or at the customer location, or a cloud-based device in Azure or the customer or the partner's data center, or even the customer's Azure tenant. We can spin up a virtualized SBC there as well. And what you do is you keep your own carrier, or you can get a new carrier. It really doesn't matter. But the fact is, it's not Microsoft. It's a third-party carrier. And this device, this SBC device, gets set up in the Teams admin center, and it is a device used for then routing calls in and out. So where With Microsoft Calling Plan, all the magic is behind the scenes. In a direct routing scenario, you are keenly aware that there is a session border controller there, or at least your IT or telephony staff is keenly aware that there is a border controller there. They can do things like monitor it, check its status, report on it, things like that. And then be able to build least cost routes with the session border controller. You can have a number of session border controllers in your tenant and use them for routing calls. So let's say, for example, you've got XYZ SIP trunking company. Okay. And let's back up for a second. Let's say you have, forget that. Let's say you have multiple locations. You have a location in the United States and a location in the UK. And you decide that you're going to have your carrier provides you phone numbers in both places. You could set up a session border controller in both places, the UK and the US. And then when your users go to make calls, say from the US to the UK, rather than paying international rates from a carrier, you could have that call routed through the SBC in the UK and virtually only have to pay local charges for that call. So a lot of customers and partners have chosen to deploy these SBCs in various locations and then provide them as routes to their customers or to their employees so that they can make the cost saving against international calling. Now, some of you are probably thinking, well, that sounds a little illegal? Well, it's not, because the tariffs and all that's already set up. In other words, you can't have telephony in these places without paying for all this stuff. So they kind of get it on the backside. But trust me, it's not illegal. Now, what is not allowed, I'll tell you this right up front, is you cannot take someone who is homed in the UK and give them a US number. You get into all sorts of problems with that. 911 to be the most obvious, but then there are things, and Microsoft in its documentation will tell you not to do that, even though the admin dashboard will let you. Microsoft pretty well calls it right out and says, don't do this. So here we just happen to have a graphic, just for those of you that maybe you're not completely sure how direct routing works. What we have here is just a pen. Here's your PSTN, right? This is your telephony provider. That's the carrier that you've of choice. That's the one you want to continue to use. All right. In this case, they have chosen to deploy an SBC in their data center in the cloud. So they've got a virtualized SBC up there, and they can have a connection that is either SIP based or what we call TDM, time division multiplexing. So your PRI, your T1 are terms you might be familiar with. Okay, and then from there, what's nice about direct routing is it gives you the ability to integrate your existing PBX with your team's client. Now, what's not shown here directly is a connection between these two, right? But it would happen this way. Okay, I know I'm getting the slide very dirty, I see that, but you can still have a PBX connected to your team's environment when you're using direct routing. All right, so I pretty much mucked that slide up. The last thing I wanted to tell you about the direct routing is that you can use a combination of direct routing and calling plans. And when we get into the mix and match portion, I'll expand on that just a little bit. So stay tuned for that one. All right, right along. And for some of you can tell I'm actually presenting from my desktop today. I'm on a different connection than I normally would be, so I only have the one screen, which is why you're seeing me navigate right from the presentation. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, well, we can forget about this part. This is not, we're not doing that. I don't know where that came from. That's okay. Let's do this. I feel like, what's that guy's name? Bob Ross? Oh, we'll just cut that out a little bit. All right, Operator Connect. This is a new program. What it does, you heard me say earlier that it was direct routing on steroids. what it does is allows these same operators that may have been providing direct routing the ability to be in this Operator Connect program. And the biggest key points about the program is the fact that you can self-service it right from the Teams admin dashboard, okay, just like calling plans. And the other major part of that is the fact that this connection right here is done via the Microsoft Azure Peering Service, or MAPS as we call it. This is a secure enclosed pipe between us and the carrier, between Microsoft and the carrier, okay, where direct routing is all done over the internet, the open internet, and it works just fine. MAPS is completely enclosed between Office 365 and the carrier. That's a big advantage for those people that are concerned that because there's traffic going on over the open internet, it might not be secure. So this is a big one. So the two big things is the peering with MAPS and the fact that you can administer and request numbers and change numbers and port numbers and do all that stuff right from the Teams admin dashboard. Now, if there are any telcos on our call today or listening to this recording, there is a procedure in which you can become an Operator Connect partner. And all you need to do is reach out to your Microsoft partner group or account team and ask them to get you the information so that they can sign themselves up. There's currently a backlog for Operator Connect partners. It's not GA yet, it's in preview, GA being generally available. So it is out there in preview. For those of you that like to tinker around and have admin rights to your Teams admin dashboard, you'll see it in there to play with and to request numbers. But basically, it's a third-party agreement between you and that carrier. You get the bill from them, but you can administer everything in Teams. So this all goes back to the fact that Teams is a phone system. So think about your phone system in an office. You can pretty much choose whoever you want as your phone company, right? Whether it be Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, any name, name your local phone company. And they will bring you phone lines, or what we call trunks, into your office and connect it to your phone system. Okay, well, that's all we're doing here. We're just giving you another option for the carrier you wish to use in a more secure and dedicated way so that these carriers can work directly with you. Okay, direct routing is still viable. There's still options for it. Okay, but Operator Connect just takes it to that next level. So again, we're only in 28 countries. So Operator Connect allows carriers that operate in countries other than the 28 that we have to be able to offer services, their telephony services for Teams. And then my final note down there, customers can use a combination of direct routing, calling plans, and Operator Connect. Once I start talking about the mixing and matching, that will make a little bit more sense how that works. Mouse, where are you? There we go. Okay, mixing and matching. Which one would I choose and why? So obviously Microsoft, us being Microsoft, we would want you to use our calling plans. It's easy, you get fixed minutes, you get all the reporting, you get all the metrics with that, all the things we talked about earlier. But we're not everywhere. So, or we, natively as a calling plan don't integrate with the PBX. So then you might want to add direct routing. So if you wanted to add and have direct routing and calling plans, you can do that. And what's nice about that is, like in the example where we had the US and the UK, if for some reason you needed to make a call to the UK and you didn't purchase the international calling plan and you didn't purchase communication credits, but you did set up an SBC in your tenant, you could route calls through the direct routing pipe, even though you have a calling plan number. Now, how does that work? Well, as it says here, inbound calls must egress. Hold on, let me reset. Inbound calls must ingress via the calling plan, which means the users have to have a calling plan. Okay, they have a Teams number from Microsoft. Okay, but outbound calls can either go out the calling plan or direct routing. So what does that look like? Well, if we've got this connection right here, we're just going to assume that the PSTN is out here somewhere. Okay. All right. If we've got this connection and we've got our calling plans, which again goes out to the PSTN somewhere. Okay. What we can do is our local calls will stay local and we'll use them from Teams, and our inbound calls will come in via calling plans. All right. However, if we needed to, we could send our outbound calls through direct routing if we wanted to. Okay. So let me say that again. Our inbound calls have to come in via our calling plan number. So you have to have a calling plan for that user. But if you also had a direct routing connection in your tenant, you could make it a viable outbound route or a backup route in the event for some reason that calling plans fail, or maybe you have some, for whatever reason that the calling plan may not be working. You now have an alternate route to make both emergency calls or even get emergency inbound calls. Okay. As our little note says here, direct routing numbers can only ingress and egress via direct routing. So that's part of the direct routing scenario. So if you have numbers with direct routing and are assigning them to users, they cannot then call out via a Microsoft calling plan. It's all just direct routing for them. So it's kind of a one-way street when you mix and match calling plans with direct routing, but it's an option. So just keep that in mind. All right. And then again, useful for disaster recovery and least cost routing, like we talked about. All right. Next, let's get rid of some of this. Kind of nice, isn't it? Some new features. All right, calling plans and Operator Connect. All right, both managed from the TAC, right? The Teams Admin Center, and both will have numbers, but there is no cross calling integration. In other words, you can't have a calling plan and then dial out via an Operator Connect like you did with direct routing, because there actually is no quote unquote route. It looks and acts just like Microsoft calling plans, except you're getting those phone numbers from someone else and those calls are going out through Maps, through the Azure peering service. It doesn't show up as a routable device in Teams like the SBCs did in direct routing. So you can't select it for individual users, and you can't select it from a number normalization plan, like if you wanted to try dial international and have it go out over Operator Connect. That does not happen. It does not work because there's no routable device identified in the Teams Admin Center like there is with direct routing. So while you can have a mix and match of calling plans and Operator Connect numbers, because say in the US you chose calling plans, but in a country where we don't provide it, you happen to find an Operator Connect partner that does, users based in that country would use the Operator Connect phone numbers, and users based in the US would use the calling plan phone numbers. Now, of course, they can still call each other, right? They're in the same tenant. So calling from one person to another person is a peer-to-peer call, right, over IP. It's not an actual phone call. And if they happen to dial that person's number by accident, the teams would do what's called a reverse number lookup and see the fact that that number is actually assigned to a user in the same tenant, and then would convert that call to a peer-to-peer call. So you wouldn't have to worry about people trying to dial across them. So you can have Operator Connect and calling plans for that number. Now, finally, direct routing and Operator Connect can also exist. So similar to the way calling plans and direct routing work, Operator Connect and direct routing can work together. Now, what I don't know, although I think I can pretty safely say, is whether or not you can use direct routing as an alternate route when you're using Operator Connect. I would assume yes, because number normalization happens at the client level and the routes are done at the tenant level, so that then you would see your Operator Connect and you would also see your direct routing, and you should be able to, but I've not gotten any clear guidance on that. So we're just going to put a little star right? Caveat on that, we don't know if they can use each other or if Operator Connect can use direct routing as an outbound path, similar to the way calling plans did. My suspicion is yes, but again, this is still new. It's not fully GA, so I'm not aware if that's possible or not. And I've probably created a lot of questions. Kelly, I'm going to take a pause. How are we doing?
We do have a couple of questions, and I didn't want to interrupt you in this case just because of the content and you actually going through all of the options.
Okay.
So I apologize. We did have a question come in early. So this is the beginning part of your presentation, but we have someone who wants to know, why did Microsoft put shared lines under the channel and not allow the user access to the number from the calls option on Teams?
Whoa. Why did Microsoft put the shared
lines under the channel and not allow user access to that number from the calls option on Teams?
Boy, I'm going to need a little more context on that one. Why don't
Okay.
you go ahead and respond to that individual with my email?
Okay.
And let them reach out to me directly. And
Okay, perfect.
I'll do that. How about what's next?
Okay, next one. This individual wants to know, do you know when they will add a default call forwarded number to DIDs that are not being used that doesn't use a Microsoft license? They used to have this in Skype.
Yes, gotcha. No, I have no information on that, unfortunately. Right, yes, so I know what they're doing. Right now, unused numbers that are sitting in a tenant will just, I think you get a message that says this number is not assigned instead of being forwarded to like a BTN, like a business telephone number. I understand that. Keep bubbling that up with your account teams and your contacts at Microsoft. It's entirely possible it's in the works, or it may even be, it may be one of the advantages that direct routing providers and or Operator Connect providers are giving you, where Microsoft hasn't offered that yet. So it might be a little value add from that. Don't have any specific guidance on that. But tell you what, if that individual wants to email me as well, I'll be able to stay in touch and check on that, because I think that's a great feature. And you're right, it was in Skype for Business, and it was and has been an ask. So yeah, let's capture that as well.
Okay, perfect. Next question. You mentioned that Teams Auto converts a phone call to a peer-to-peer VoIP call if someone accidentally dials a phone number that is assigned to someone on the same tenant. What if we want to not do that? What if we want people to be able to dial someone over PSTN, even if they are both on the tenant, if they dial a 10-digit phone number? What are our options?
So the Teams does have the ability to turn off RNL or reverse number lookup, and that would be the answer. So what happens is if RNL is turned off, it's on by default. It's done in PowerShell. But if it is off, Teams will not do that lookup, and the call will go out as a regular phone call.
Perfect.
Pretty simple. Pretty simple.
Great. We just have about 2 minutes remaining if anyone wants to go ahead and submit any additional questions. Just a friendly reminder, I'm just going to go ahead and make another announcement here. Just really quick, we kindly ask that you please take a moment to submit feedback on today's session, request any upcoming topics that you would like to see, or if you would like someone from Microsoft to reach out to you directly about anything. It could be about this event, it could be about a past event, it could be about a completely different topic. Doesn't matter what it is. This form, every question is optional. Feel free to make your selections based off of where your interest falls and opt into future communications. So thank you for taking the time to do that. Additionally, we do have some upcoming events. Again, we have part 3 and part 4, which will wrap up our hybrid work series. So I'll actually be leading the next couple sessions. So we are going to be talking about how Microsoft does hybrid work, and then we're also going to be talking about from an individual perspective, right? So those of us actually in a hybrid workplace, how do you thrive in that environment?
Those are going to be great sessions.
What?
Those are going to be great sessions. Looking forward to them.
Yeah, they're going to be great. Okay, great. And that individual said that they'll email you. So it looks like we're just about at time here. So we wrapped up right on time. We really appreciate everyone for spending 30 minutes with us. Again, please feel free to join us for the upcoming hybrid sessions to close us out. They're going to be really great. Also, great additions from a business user perspective, so please feel free to forward those events on. As always, all of our events are posted on demand, so it will be up shortly on the TryThisAt.Work website. So thank you so much, everyone, and we appreciate your time. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, everyone.